Hey there, education students and future teachers. Imagine walking into your very own classroom on the first day of school. The desks are arranged, the materials are out, and your students are arriving. Now I want you to ask yourself, is this a space where children just follow directions, or is it a space where they truly take ownership of their learning? In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how you can intentionally design your classrooms to support genuine student agency. We're bridging the gap between educational theory and the practical reality of your future classroom. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Rethinking student agency. 2. Shifting your teaching paradigm. 3. Designing the physical space. 4. Structuring meaningful choices. 5. Fostering inclusive student voice. And finally, 6. A practical design framework. All right, Section 1, Rethinking Student Agency and what it really means. Let's tackle a huge misconception right out of the gate. As a new teacher, you might be thinking, doesn't giving agency just mean letting go the reins and letting kids do whatever they want? Well, actually, no. Research tells a completely different story. Across early childhood and primary research, student agency is defined as a highly relational and supported process. It's something that develops through constant interactions between the child, you as their teacher, their peers, the materials, and the room itself. It absolutely requires your active guidance, structure, and continuous feedback. There is a real myth out there that giving agency means teachers just step back and offer complete unstructured freedom. But honestly, that just leads to chaos, and it actually disadvantages the students who need more support. The reality is far more powerful. Agency is not about teacher withdrawal. It's about you deliberately inviting your students to be capable co-participants in the room. You're intentionally giving them influence over their learning pathways, their relationships, and their daily routines. Moving to Section 2, Shifting your teaching paradigm and viewing the child. To make this reality happen, we literally have to change our fundamental teaching paradigm. Agency-supportive teaching starts with one core assumption. Young children have their own theories, interests, intentions, and completely legitimate perspectives. The child is viewed as a co-constructor of knowledge, rather than just a passive recipient. This is a massive concept championed by the Reggio Emilia tradition. When you view a child this way, it completely changes the questions you ask. Instead of just wondering, can they follow my instructions? You start asking, what is this child trying to understand? And how can their idea influence what we do next? So rather than just handing out a rigid, prepackaged curriculum, try embedding agency into your planning using a continuous cycle. First, notice and listen to what the children are interested in. Next, interpret that and plan with them. Then investigate and document their findings, and finally, revisit and adapt. This is the absolute heart of project-based learning. You plan the broad goals, for sure, but you leave the actual learning pathway open to your students' contributions. And hey, pedagogical listening requires a lot more than just waiting for someone to raise their hand. For young kids, having a voice isn't just about speaking. They communicate their preferences through play and construction, drawing, gesture and movement, and even by withdrawing or resisting. Alison Clark's mosaic approach highlights this perfectly. We have to observe all these nonverbal modalities to truly understand and honor a child's perspective. Okay, Section 3, Designing the Physical Space, otherwise known as the third teacher. Let's talk about the room itself. You've got to treat your classroom environment as the third teacher. This is foundational. The physical space you set up will either actively enable your kids to be independent, or it'll passively restrict them, just as much as your lesson plans do. Think about a restrictive room for a second. The desks are permanently fixed in rows, materials are locked away in cupboards, and bulletin boards look like finished museum exhibits. Now compare that to an agentic environment. Flexible spaces for collaboration, materials placed right at the children's eye level so they can independently reach and return them. Even the displays are unfinished, basically inviting students to add to them and revise their thinking. But here's a reality check from researchers Julia Morris and Wesley Ims. You can buy the most expensive, flexible furniture in the world, but furniture alone does not create agency. Flexibility only works when it's paired with your intentional pedagogy. You have to actively teach your students how to make purposeful decisions about where they sit, how they work, and who they collaborate with. Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, Structuring Meaningful Choices and Scaffolded Agency. Let's talk about choices in your lesson plans. There's a massive difference between superficial choice and consequential choice. Letting a student pick between two identical worksheets or asking if they want to use a blue pen or a black pen, that's totally superficial. The goal and the process are completely predetermined by you. Real, meaningful agency requires
consequential choice. It means designing open-ended tasks where students can choose multiple starting points, different strategies, and even the final audience for their work.
Now, that doesn't mean you just throw open the doors and offer infinite options. Self-determination theory shows us that unlimited, poorly structured choice is actually paralyzing. It can deeply disadvantage kids who have less prior knowledge or aren't as familiar with school expectations. Agency requires scaffolded choice. The options you give must be understandable, manageable, and connected to a clear goal. To make those choices work, you literally have to teach self-regulated learning. Students don't inherently know how to manage a long-term project. Model specific classroom routines. Teach them how to set a goal, how to use visual planning boards, how to pause and monitor their progress, and how to actively use feedback. When you teach these strategies, you're giving them the actual tools they need to exercise their agency. All right, Section 5, Fostering Inclusive Student Voice and Genuine Participation. How do we make sure every kid's voice actually matters? Watch out for tokenism. Putting a suggestion box in the corner just for the sake of it is totally tokenistic if it never leads to anything real. If you're asking for children's opinions but never report back or change anything, you're not building agency. You're actively weakening their trust in you. Laura Lundy has this brilliant model of participation to fix that exact problem. For student voice to be genuine, it needs 4 things: space, a safe opportunity to express views; voice, actual support to communicate them; audience, someone with responsibility like you who really listens; and finally, influence. The view must be considered and actually have the potential to affect a decision. Finally, Section 6, a practical design framework looking at the 6 dimensions of design. Let's pull all this theory together. This framework is basically your ultimate cheat sheet for evaluating your own teaching practice, your lesson plans, and your classroom setup. Seriously, ask yourself these 6 design questions. Purpose. Can children influence what the learning is for? Process. Can they influence how it happens, like choosing tools or collaborators? Representation. Can they communicate in different modes? Environment. Can they easily access and modify the space? Evaluation. Can they judge and improve their work using co-created criteria? And governance. Can they influence shared classroom life? Running through these dimensions guarantees you are intentionally building agency into every single aspect of your teaching. As we wrap up this explainer, I've got a challenge for you regarding inclusivity. Student agency is deeply tied to identity and culture. Participation structures often unfairly privilege confident speakers or culturally familiar forms of independence. So you have to ask yourself, are you defining independence through just one narrow cultural lens? Make sure your room rewards multiple ways of knowing and being. So as you head out into your practicums, look around those classrooms and ask yourself this final question. Whose communication is being overlooked in this design? Who's getting the complex choices and who is being left out? True student agency isn't just an education buzzword. It's about designing a space where every single student is seen, heard, and trusted as capable. Thanks so much for joining me, and good luck building those future classrooms.